Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Shaguna-rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Adorations to the Divine Preceptor, who is the bliss of Brahman, the giver of supreme joy, the embodiment of pure consciousness, beyond the pairs of opposites, vast like the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond all modifications. To that divine Guru I offer my adorations. Om Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Ganesha, Jaya Ganesha, Jaya Ganesha Pahimam. Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha Rakshamam. Jaya Saraswati, Jaya Saraswati, Jaya Saraswati Pahimam. Shri Saraswati, Shri Saraswati, Shri Saraswati Rakshamam. Jaya Shri Lakshmi, Jaya Shri Lakshmi, Jaya Shri Lakshmi Pahimam. Jaya Shri Lakshmi, Jaya Shri Lakshmi, Jaya Shri Lakshmi Rakshamam. Jaya Guru Shiva Guru Hari Guru Ram. Jagara Guru Parama Guru Sadguru Shyam. Adi Guru Advait Guru Ananda Guru Om. Chidguru Chidgana Guru Chinmaya Guru Om. Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Om. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om. Divine blessings, Om Tat Sat, to anyone who is watching now, watching the live, or will watch later. Welcome to Yoga Vasistha. Tonight we have, we'll be trying to cover 2 sections. We're on book 1, Mumukshu, Vyavahara, Prakarana, which is a section of the qualities of a seeker, of an aspirant. And we're doing section 4, the glory of self-effort. And hopefully also section 5, the power of self-effort, because they both go together. They go hand in hand. And they kind of flow well together. And so hopefully within the hour we can get through it. They're not super long, but we shall see. So please let me know if there's any issues with the signal or audio or anything like that, so then I can see what's happening. Okay, so where we left off last week, we left off where we were discussing the vasanas and like how they're like an onion. And there's all these different layers upon layers, and that's how our human embodiments are, the different embodiments. And so now we're going to be talking about the glory of self-effort. Excuse me. Sri Vasistha continued, O gentle Rama, the ocean is the same whether with rolling waves or with calm placidity. In the same way, the experience of liberation is the same whether in a Jivan Mukta, liberated in life, sustaining the waves of practical reality, or in a Videha Mukta, liberated without the body. And so last week we were discussing how Lord Rama was wanting to know how come some people were liberated after the death of the physical body, and then other people were liberated while still alive. And so this is where it gets into the reasoning, kind of why. But the experience of a soul that's liberated while still in human embodiment is the same experience of a soul that is liberated after death due to the amount of self-effort that was put forth in previous embodiments and that current embodiment that the soul is now leaving. A liberated sage does not enjoy the objects of the world with a sense of egoistic involvement. He does not feel, I am the enjoyer, I am enjoying this object. Therefore, he rises beyond the awareness of the relative realities of the world. And so with liberated sages and saints, they do not they've spent so long and so much dedication has gone towards developing dispassion and getting rid of and reducing their attachments to the worldly objects and things among the world process and the objects of the world. And so while alive and in physical form and in physical embodiment, they still interact and have objects and they own objects and they use objects, which is kind of like common sense because they still have to have certain things to sustain daily living and what they do, such as carrying on the scriptures and teachings and things like that. And so we can look at Guru Ma or what Guruji's setup was, or Swami Jyotirmayananda, and the different things that they use and that they have. There's no egoistic involvement in this. There's no attachment. And so they're moving and living amongst the things, but they're not for the ego. The ego is not involved. And so that's where they've risen beyond the awareness of the relative reality of the world. Therefore, O Rama, listen to the illuminating instructions that are designed to dispel the darkness of ignorance. A well-sustained self-effort leads to success in every field of life. Wherever one encounters failure, it is due to a lack of self-effort. And so what's being explained to Lord Rama is our self-effort. Self-effort is extremely important on the spiritual path, but it is also extremely important in our day-to-day living and everything we do, whether you are a spiritual person or not. And on the spiritual path, our self-effort needs to be well sustained. If our self-effort is just kind of here and there, a little bit here, then a few days of not doing anything, and then a little bit here, and it's more scattered and non-consistent, then that type of self-effort, it's not going to lead to success. And you can compare that in the practical world of things with career and academic involvement, where if you're not consistently putting in your self-effort, you're not going to get a raise with your job or a promotion with your job or even keep your job. And then with academics, the self-effort is consistently required because we move up from grade school, like kindergarten and first grade, second grade, and you keep moving on up until high school, secondary school, and you graduate and then going to college. And so there's always that sustained self-effort. But if the sustained self-effort was not there, then these things would not have been accomplished, and there would be no success in these fields. True self-effort consists of those actions of body, speech, and mind that render the unconscious chitta pure, and thereby lead to the revelation of the moon of spiritual bliss beyond the dark clouds of mental impurities. The goal of self-effort is the attainment of self-realization. And so true self-effort is pure self-effort. And so that means the ego is not involved in the effort. And the self-effort of the actions include actions of our body, actions of our speech, actions of our mind. And so the things that we do with our body, if they're pure or not, and then the things that we say and that we speak about other people, to other people, even about ourselves or to ourselves. And then also of the mind, and having a pure mind and pure thoughts, and not having like hateful or negative thoughts or jealousy, things like that. And so the effort that you're putting into your life and your day-to-day living, we want to aim for pure, true self-effort, and not putting effort into what is not helpful, what is negative, what's demoniac, because that's not helpful. And then the goal of all this self-effort is the attainment of self-realization. And so over all these human embodiments and different embodiments that we've had over time, which none of us know how many we've actually had, the overall goal has been self-realization. And in each embodiment, there has been a different level of self-effort that we have put forth. And we'll go a little more into that in a little bit. Reliance on destiny is an expression of weak will and confused mind. Who has seen destiny performing actions without human self-effort? Whoever accomplishes anything in this world does so due to the result of his sustained self-effort. Destiny, therefore, exists as a figment of imagination in a diseased mind. And this is an important thing to know and to understand, especially with the popularity of manifestation and manifesting things that people want and desire. It's something that's seen a lot online. So when you're relying on destiny, it's almost like sitting back and giving up. And so there's no self-effort in that. And that is due to ignorance. And relying on destiny is not going to get you anywhere, because destiny, as the saying goes that we've always heard from Guruji and from other sages and saints, is we are the architects of our own destiny. And so the destiny is designed and built due to our self-effort. We are the architect. By being the architect, we have put through self-effort. And so that's how the destiny is designed. But if you're just relying on destiny, there's no self-effort. And so it's just an expression of weak will and confusion. And so it's important to understand that. And destiny requires human self-effort. Whoever accomplishes anything in the world does so due to the result of sustained self-effort. So you can look at basically anything that anyone has done, whether good, bad, legal, or illegal, and it has all been done because that person put forth self-effort. You look at very successful authors, movie directors, sages, saints, disciples, priests, movie stars, criminals, you name it. All of these people, the thing they have in common is that they all put forth consistent self-effort, a sustained self-effort to achieve whatever it was that they're wanting to achieve. And so destiny is technically just a figment of imagination in a diseased mind if they're just relying on destiny alone and thinking, well, it's my destiny, I'm just destined to be a bad person, so I give up. Well, that's ignorant. Your destiny is technically your amount of self-effort that you're putting into something. If one performs actions, whether vocal, physical, or mental, that are enjoined by the scriptures and the sages, then it is right self-effort. He is bound to succeed in attaining self-realization. So what this means with right self-effort and enjoined by the scriptures is when we look through, when we look through all the scriptures, we can see that they are all basically a guidebook on how to live our life and how to live, I would use the word properly, but other people might not. And so in the scriptures, it talks about how we use our voice, we use our body, and we use our thoughts. And when they're in alignment with how the scriptures are guiding us to work through our personality and developing the personality, and then acknowledging and working on our negative qualities that we might have, then if we're doing these things according to the scriptures and how it directs us, then we are bound to succeed in attaining self-realization. Sustained self-effort leads to the gradual unraveling of the goal of self-realization. One's self-effort must be characterized by unbroken continuity, perseverance, and patience. One must not give up his self-effort because of obstacles. So we all are going to have obstacles that are going to pop up in life. That's part of human life. That's part of being alive and living on the earth. There's just always going to be something. But no matter what it is that pops up, no matter what that something is, it's not a reason to give up. It's not a reason to sit back and choose to no longer participate or do anything. The importance of the self-effort is that it's unbroken and that we persevere and we develop patience and what people would call grit. And so an example is like what my physical body is going through, and then just persevering through it, continuing on through it. It would be easy to give up. That would be the easy choice and the easier route. But by giving up, I would not be putting in the self-effort that, according to the scriptures, I need to be doing, because part of that is taking care of my physical body. And so I have to keep on putting in the self-effort no matter how hard it gets, how challenging it gets, or what the results might be, like of the testing that I'm going through, and I just have to keep persevering and developing patience. Like even to have the CAP test that I recently finished, I had to wait 6 months just to have that done. So it was a lot of patience, and that was a test. And these tests and these obstacles that pop up, it helps us with our self-effort. So instead of seeing it as like an obstacle and then just giving up on our self-effort, we can see it more as a challenge. And I like to see it as like life is like a game, kind of like a video game, and you get through all these levels and you can level up and you gain experience points, you gain XP. And so thinking of things like that makes it kind of fun, a little entertaining. While gathering momentum of will, he will be able to overthrow all that comes in his way by the force of this sustained self-effort. All greatness and glory in the universe has been attained due to self-effort. It is by the force of self-effort that a soul rose to Indrahood and became the ruler of the three worlds. It is by the force of self-effort that a soul rose to the grandeur of Bhagavan Vishnu and became the sustainer of the entire universe. It is by the force of self-effort that a soul attained the lofty state of Shiva, who adorns his forehead with the moon and wears a garland of snakes. Self-effort has two aspects: the self-effort of our past lives and the self-effort of the present life. And so these are aspects of self-effort. Of these two, the self-effort of the present life has the capacity to overthrow the karmic process caused by the past self-effort. So what this means is what our self-effort was in past embodiments and what that led to, the karmas that it led to in the karmic process. What we are now doing in this embodiment and our sustained self-effort, it can overthrow that, which is kind of confusing to think about at first. But it's like, so when I think on how I might have been in past lives, and then I'm looking at my current embodiment, and I can think of how what I'm going through right now is due to past embodiments and choices I made, and self-effort or lack of self-effort. And so those are karmas, and right now those karmas are coming to fruit. They are blooming, so to say. And so I'm having to go through these. But if I continue my self-effort consistently and I sustain it through this, I will succeed no matter the outcome. And it makes it easier, so it will weaken this current karmic process. And so that's kind of like what it means. It overthrows the karmic process that was caused by the past self-effort. So if what I'm going through with my health is due to a past karmic process, then if I continue putting in my self-effort and doing everything in my power to my capacity that I can, then that becomes stronger than what happened in a past embodiment. Those who persevere with self-effort and are endowed with endurance and wisdom attain the glorious state of a god who reigns supreme during the period of cosmic deluge. They can swallow up the Meru Mountains and destroy the entire creation. It is difficult then for them to destroy the karmas of the past. Self-effort that is governed by the wisdom. Sorry, my watch. It goes off. Self-effort that is governed by the wisdom and the insight of the scriptures leads one to success. But effort that is not in accord with the scriptures produces evil results. And so, like I mentioned earlier, the self-effort, everyone puts self-effort into something. And we have that free will of choosing because we are humans. And so you can put your self-effort into good things, or you can put your self-effort into bad things. You can put your self-effort into being a good person, or you can put your self-effort into being a criminal. We have that free will. We have that choice, the decision making. And so if the self-effort that we choose is governed by the scriptures, then that's on the path of good. That's the path of righteous. And so that is the path that leads us to success and overcoming our demoniac qualities, being a good person, a good community member, like all things positive. But then if we do the opposite and we go against what is in the scriptures, then that's where it's more you're heading down the demoniac path. And so that's what produces the evil results that it mentions. And so when you think of the self-effort that like a criminal puts into being a criminal, yeah, they could be successful in what they're doing. They put in a lot of self-effort, but it's producing evil results by they can have a criminal record, they go to jail, and then their next embodiment is going to be a lower embodiment instead of kind of working your way up to higher embodiments. When a sustained self-effort in accord with the scriptures is relaxed, there begins to grow the forest of attachment and hatred in the unconscious, rendering a person unsuccessful, afflicted with poverty, and subject to the humiliating conditions of disease, debility, and bondage. So what it means by relaxed is not relaxed in the good way or the good sense. It means more of like relaxed and like lazy in a way. So if we think about how we put in our self-effort with whatever we're doing, especially our spiritual practices and on our spiritual journey, when the self-effort is sustained and you're building this momentum, like you're doing really good. And when this happens and when people are feeling really good about what they're doing and how things are going in their experiences, they become a bit relaxed in their practices. And so they kind of, in a way, start slacking off a little bit. And so when you do that, it's kind of like, trying to think of like a way to explain it. It's almost like you let your guards back down. And so when you let these guards back down, it's easier for like the attachments to come back and grow stronger. The stress or hatred or jealousy or whatever it is that you had been working on and having success with overcoming, these things can just all come flooding back in. And so it can render you unsuccessful and afflicted with all of these things again that you spent so long working on. And I can actually attest to this personally on my spiritual journey, because it can be easy to get into everything and you're just really like gung-ho, you jump in with 2 feet and you're like doing your early like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock meditations, and you overhauled your dietary, you're doing your yoga asanas, your sun salutations, you're attending satsangas, you're doing scriptural studies, like you're doing all these things. And that can be really good at the beginning, like, and none of it's bad, but you can jump in too quickly, too much, and then it fizzles out. And this is what Guruji would always call the soda pop enthusiasm, where, like, if you think of a soda can and then you pop it open and it fizzes and it's like, psh, and then it just kind of fizzles out. And so when our self-effort is sustained, and then if you relax in it and start slacking off and it fizzles out, that's where all these conditions, they come back in, and these afflictions that you had worked on. And so, overcome by these humiliating conditions, the soul, having lost its infinite resources, begs even for drops of the petty enjoyments of this transient world. So it's almost kind of like an addiction in a way, because you had these attachments and then you kind of like get a taste of them again and you get sucked back into it again, and then hopefully you realize it and then are able to go back and work on it again. And that's where I can relate to it, because at the beginning, like, I did jump in with 2 feet and I did do a lot, and I didn't like burn out. I didn't fizzle myself out. Like, I was very rigid with myself, and I had to learn to have grace with myself when things popped up in life, and not be hard on myself when I wasn't able to keep up. And so that's where, like, I had a lot of discussions with Guruji about it, because with my health, like, I did used to wake up at 3:45, 4 o'clock every morning, like clockwork. Like, my body just, I sprung out of bed. It was simple. And then when my health declined again, my body was needing more rest. And so I started feeling guilty and really bad for not being able to do what I was once doing. And so it did feel kind of humiliating in a way. And then the soul craves these things. You get to a point where the soul really does crave these things. And you're overcome by it. And so you end up feeling lost. But when right self-effort is sustained properly, with the understanding of having grace with yourself, one rises to that lofty state of consciousness wherein even the perspective of ruling the vast earth, abounding with prosperity, is considered insignificant compared to the glory of self-realization. And what this means, where the perspective of ruling the vast earth, is people, so the goal of life is self-realization, and is liberation of the soul. But many people put their self-effort in their spiritual journey for the heavenly worlds. And so that's where, when the right self-effort is sustained and you've reached that lofty state of consciousness, you're not interested in the heavenly worlds. You're not interested in that. What you're interested in is beyond that. You're wanting to liberate the soul. You're not wanting to go to the heavenly worlds and then live out your good karmas and then come back and do all of this all over again. You're basically, you're just done. You're over it. You don't want to come back. And so this is where, so this is the end of section 4, but there's a footnote from Swami Jyotirmayananda where he said to look at the Death and Reincarnation book, which I actually have. And it's this big green book that he wrote a long time ago. There's not many copies of it at all. And so I found what he was mentioning, and I wanted to read it because it expands a little bit on this topic of self-effort. Thus, broadly speaking, karma is of three types: sanchita karma, or accumulated karma; prarabdha karma, or fructifying karma, that is the karma in the process of germinating, developing, and bearing fruits in the form of experiences of pleasure and pain; and kriyamana karma, or actions that are being performed in the day-to-day life, which will bear fruit in the near future or in a distant future in the forthcoming incarnations. And so there's three types of karma: the ones that we accumulated from our previous embodiments, the ones that are fructifying and blooming, so to say, in this current embodiment that we're experiencing, and then the karmas, or the actions that we are currently doing in our day-to-day life, which is going to contribute to our next embodiments. So from the storehouse of accumulated karma, a group of karmas matures at the time of death and becomes operative in the next incarnation. The group of karma... Give me 1 second. Okay, forget that part. I'm going backwards. I meant to read this part later. Okay. No, it was this one. Yeah, it is this one. Okay, never mind. So the group of karma that is responsible for your present birth and its circumstances is called your prarabdha karma. It is this karma which is frequently spoken of as destiny, and many aspects of this karma are impossible to alter. Many aspects can be changed and modified. Many cannot be changed, but they can be transcended. And so he brings up the topic of destiny, and it's frequently spoken of as destiny, the prarabdha karmas. And so the prarabdha karmas are the ones that we're currently living out and experiencing in this current embodiment. For example, you are already born in a particular family, in a particular country, and in a particular personality. You cannot change these, even though you may find fault with these. But if you are born poor, you may endeavor to become rich. If you are born in adverse circumstances, you may endeavor to overcome them. You will succeed to a very great extent. But there will always be certain circumstances that cannot be altered. Then you can face them with a philosophical understanding. When adversities are encountered heroically, one develops the power of will. With a philosophical insight, you begin to see meaning and significance even in apparently adverse circumstances. And when this vision grows, you transcend those circumstances which you cannot alter or modify. Thus, the operations of the prarabdha karma, the fructifying karma, can be worked upon by your present effort. Your actions of day to day constitute kriyamana karma, your current karmas. It is a general misunderstanding that if one is controlled by a cause from the past, how can he express any form of free will, and how can he exert at all to change his circumstances? The law of karma does not promote the theory of fate and destiny. It pulsates with the message of freedom. And so he's explaining how the three different types of karmas work, and that our destiny, we are the architects of our own destiny, And by being architects, we are putting in self-effort. We're building that destiny. And so you can't just sit back and rely on destiny. That's a saying of ignorance, of misunderstanding. And we're at, what time is it? 8:45. My phone is not showing that anyone is even watching, so I'm hoping that the live video is actually working. So if you are watching, feel free to let me know that you can hear me. Okay, yeah, we can read section 5, or at least start on it. So section 5 is the power of self-effort. Sri Vasistha continued, just as the light of sun manifests the various colors, in the same way, the self-effort of a person manifests the various developments in human life. And so our self-efforts that we put in are like, it's kind of like the architecture or like the building blocks to our life. And so if you put in self-effort in school and you study and you get good grades, you graduate. Pretty basic, pretty simple. But if you're not putting in this self-effort, then you won't get the good grades and you won't be able to pass and you won't be able to graduate. And so that's a simple way of explaining it. So our self-effort is of two types. Earlier we covered that self-effort is of two aspects. So now we're going to cover the self-effort is of two types. So type 1 is in accordance with the scriptures, and type 2 is contrary to scriptural injunctions. That which is in accordance with the scriptures enables one to integrate one's personality and evolve on the path of self-realization. That which is contrary to scriptural injunctions leads one to the world of delusion, bondage, and hellish conditions. So once again, it's how we're deciding to spend our self-effort and where we are putting in our self-effort. And so our self-effort is either in accordance with the scriptures, because the scriptures act like a guidebook to how we live our life, or it's going against the scriptures. The self-effort of the past and the self-effort of the present fight with each other like battling rams, and whichever is the stronger of the two triumphs. And that's where we can consistently put in our self-effort to overcome an obstacle of a fructifying karma in this current embodiment. And it basically will overthrow that karmic process from a prior embodiment. Therefore, even when one has not succeeded in one's effort, he should not discredit the power of self-effort. It is the self-effort of his past that has asserted itself. And so even if we're putting in our self-effort in whatever it is that we're doing, if it's not going the way that we hoped or we planned, then we still shouldn't give up. We should still keep putting in the self-effort, however is necessary in our capacity, and just keep on going and have that perseverance and develop that perseverance to keep on going. And so it's only the self-effort from our past embodiments which has now asserted itself. And so that's where it's considered like a fight between battling rams. And so basically you have a battling ram that represents our past embodiment and a battling ram to represent the current embodiment, and they're fighting it out. Well, you want the current one to win, so it needs to be stronger, and so you need to have more consistent self-effort. Therefore, an aspirant must take recourse to good association and perform self-effort in accordance with the scriptures, in order to overcome the obstructive karmas of the past. Even the obstructions presented by gods are due to the negative karmas of the past. When the positive karmas are strengthened, all obstructions are overcome. And so that's where we have to be consistent, and we have to persevere and develop that grit and that determination to keep on going, no matter how difficult or how challenging it becomes, whatever the circumstances. Let a person perform his self-effort with all his strength, with gritting teeth and clenched fists. Let him not surrender to the past self-effort performed in previous births. The present self-effort has the potentiality to conquer all the past effort. And so basically it's saying, don't give up. Keep putting in this self-effort with all your strength, and don't surrender to the past self-effort. Don't surrender to the fructifying karma, whatever the circumstances that you're going through, or the challenge or the obstacle that has risen. Because your present self-effort, as long as it is sustained and it is consistent to your capacity by being practical, keeping practical, it has the potential to overcome the past effort and be stronger. One's effort must be maintained until the past negative karma is overpowered. The virtues of this life are bound to overcome the vices of the past lives. Therefore, one must cultivate serenity, self-control, reflection, and meditation by his self-effort. And so, the theme of these sections of being self-effort and the importance of maintaining it and being consistent as much as possible, so that the virtues in this life that we develop, because we work on developing virtues, and then getting rid of the vices in our life, so virtues over vices. And so some of the virtues that you're cultivating and developing by putting in all this self-effort is serenity and self-control, reflection, and meditation. A man devoid of self-effort is worse than a slothful donkey. So it's a weird saying, but if you think of a donkey and how donkeys and mules are used, like packing mules, to carry things up like mountains and steep cliffs and through rough terrain. Well, if the donkey is slothful, and you think of a sloth like really slow and like sleepy and lazy, well, then the donkey's not very useful at that point. And so a man devoid of self-effort is actually worse than a useless donkey. So it's an interesting saying. Having faith in the divine self as his inner reality, he must gird up his loins to attain liberation through self-realization. And so kind of another funny bit. It's basically like if you've ever heard the old saying of pull yourself up by your britches, or put your big girl panties on. To me, personally, it's kind of like saying that. So you're girding up your loins, you are pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you are putting in the self-effort, and you're having faith in the divine self. And not only that, you also have faith in the scriptures to help guide you through this. So just as a lion emerges out of a cage by breaking it, so one must release oneself from the fetters of the world process by the force of self-effort. So imagine a lion being stuck in a cage, and it doesn't want to be in the cage, and how much self-effort is going to go into breaking these bars open or breaking the door down. And so similarly, we have to kind of be the same way. So we have to force that self-effort. We have to sustain it and keep going, and we have to break down the fetters of the world process that hold us bondage, that holds the soul bondage, and break free from the cycle of birth and death. An aspirant should consider his body perishable. So we should always remember that the physical body is perishable because it is a living organism. We're living beings, and whatever is living is also dying and will eventually die. He should not act like an animal devoid of reason. He should pursue the conduct of great men and sages. So basically, we should not just treat our body like garbage. We should treat it with respect. We should take care of it. Don't act like an animal and go crazy or anything like that. He should pursue the conduct of great men and sages. And so look to the sages and the saints of the world and how they carry themselves and how they act. And then be inspired and guided by those examples. He should not waste his youthful energy in tasting the disgusting pleasures of the senses, like vermin reveling in the pus of a blistered sore. Rather, he should take recourse to self-effort for attaining self-realization. And so that's simply saying not to waste time. And so it's a reminder of how we have this human embodiment, and the human embodiment is a gift, and we don't know how long or how short of the time we get with it. And so we should not kind of waste it away or sit back idly and do nothing. Because the goal of this human embodiment is self-realization. It is to liberate the soul. It's uniting with God. One who ignores his present ability for self-effort and is frightened by his past might as well be frightened by his own arms, thinking that they're two dangling snakes. So another kind of funny saying, because if you ignore your present ability for self-effort and you're frightened by your past, well, those things go hand in hand, because your past actions have led up to your present ability. And so if those things are represented by your arms, and you imagine like being scared of your own arms and trying to run away from them because you think they're snakes. So it's like an illusion. And if one says that he is led by destiny, then his blackened countenance is abhorred by the goddess of prosperity. Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, turns away from anyone who relies on destiny. And so Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, she blesses the souls that put in the self-effort. If you're just relying on destiny and you're not putting self-effort in, it's like she turns away from you. And their prosperity and the abundance is not going to be present in your life because the self-effort has not been put forth. All great men attain success through their self-effort. Reliance on destiny is an expression of ignorance and is the main cause of failure. True self-effort joins with good association and is guided by scriptural wisdom. So once again, it's mentioning that the true self-effort, good self-effort, the real self-effort is guided by the scriptures, and it is positive. It is not something negative or egotistical or demoniac. Such self-effort gives its result in a short time, but self-effort that is devoid of insight and wisdom leads to negative developments. And so You can think of like self-effort that billionaires, like multi-billionaires, have put into things, and it's kind of led to like negative developments because I'm not saying all, because I'm sure there are good people that are multi-billionaires, but a lot of them, they are led by ego. They are led by greed for money and name and fame and accumulating worldly objects. And so it has led to those negative developments because their self-effort was not led by wisdom and insight. Men who were once sunk in the worst conditions of adversity and poverty have risen to the heights of gods by the virtue of their self-effort. And this reminds me of part of the Bhagavad Gita where you lift your lower self by your higher self. And so that is because of your self-effort. Self-effort must be sustained from a very early age in order that it may be powerful and intensive. A self-effort that has been adopted without sustained perseverance in a sporadic manner is like a tender thorn that cannot be used to remove a hard thorn from one's body. In other words, such self-effort is unable to gather enough strength to overthrow the karmas of the past. And so another reminder of the self-effort that we put in our spiritual journey, it needs to be sustained. It needs to be consistent. And when I talk about sustained and consistent self-effort, I'm not meaning like rigid, the exact same every day, because that is where mistakes will be made. And that's where I learned at the beginning of my own personal journey that your self-effort, when it is consistent and it is sustained, it means you're doing it. It's not defining like a definitive capacity or a definitive time every single day. So some days are going to look a little different than other days because that is living practical. Like people go to work, they have doctor appointments, they get sick. So like with me, it was changing my meditation times and not being able to wake up as early as I preferred. And I was having to sleep longer because of my health, and my body was requiring longer sleep. And so even though it changed each morning, I'm still consistent with what I'm doing. It might be at a little bit later of a time, but it is still consistent. And so that's where you keep sustaining it, and your self-effort becomes strong. And that's where it develops the strength to overcome the karmic processes from the previous embodiments. If this inauspicious laziness did not exist in this world, who would not have attained success and supreme bliss? It is the lack of promptness caused by dullness and by the habit of mental procrastination which deprives one of success and achievement. And so this is saying, if laziness didn't exist in the world, basically everybody would be successful. Like, everyone would just be successful in whatever they were doing. But because lack of promptness and dullness and procrastination and all these other things, because they exist and we are prone to them, if we are not working on them, then we will not have success or achievement in whatever our endeavors are in life, especially our spiritual practices and our spiritual journey. If we're not consistent and we get lazy and we slack off, then we're not going to notice the changes within ourselves. We're not going to have the experiences that you can have during your meditations and those kind of like aha moments while reflecting on things or studying the scriptures, etc., etc. Due to dullness and laziness, this world teems with human beings who are nothing but miserable animals driven by the instinctive urges of life. Which, yeah, that is true. Due to dullness and laziness, there are a lot of human beings on the planet who are dull and lazy and are overrun by the one of the three gunas is the tamasic, and that's the dullness, the sloth, the laziness, the ignorance. And so when you're overrun by these things, it leads to pretty miserable living conditions. Not being joyful, not being happy, you don't have a drive to do anything, you don't really have interest to do things, and you're driven by instinctive urges of life. So you are more attached to the worldly process and worldly objects and things like that. After one has overcome excuse me. After one has overcome childish fickleness, he must study yoga under the guidance of a guru. He must discover the faults of his personality and endeavor to remove them in order to attain self-realization. This is the perspective of self-effort. It is a process leading to self-realization. And so once we're done basically being childish, like even though the majority of us watching this were adults, once you overcome the childish fickleness and you kind of settle down or you begin to be interested in yoga, that's whenever it's the right time, the guru will appear. You will come across who your guru is meant to be. And then when you formally begin studying under the guru, this is where you really kind of start churning, and the demoniac qualities that we all have within ourselves, we all have these things, they start coming to the surface and you start realizing them, like your own negative personality traits, and you start the process of exploring deeper into these things and figuring out why, and then removing them. And by doing so, that's where you thin out like the vasanas, and you thin that veil of illusion, and your perspectives change. And this is all due to self-effort. This is the outcome of self-effort. And when you sustain that self-effort, which is a process, it is not an overnight thing. When you sustain the self-effort, this is what leads to the realization of the self. This is what leads to the liberation of the soul. This is what leads to connecting with God, uniting with God, being one with God, and continuing to live in this world with that at the forefront of your mind, with that perspective. And that's where earlier it mentioned like the Jivan Muktas, like Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji is a Jivan Mukta. And so that ends. I know we've gone a little over time, but I really did want to cover those two sections because they went together with the topic of self-effort. And there was a quote. Where did I put it? There it is. So I wanted to end it. So some of y'all know, but some of y'all don't know. I've been a disciple of Guruji Swami Nikhilananda since 2020, and religiously watched every single Satsanga video that he did on Facebook and on YouTube. If you go on YouTube, you can actually read through my commentary on pretty much every single video he did, because I learned alongside him when he was covering each scripture book. So one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was capturing things that he said over the years that really stood out. So I wanted to share one that he said a couple years ago in regards to self-effort, which was the topic of tonight. And I think y'all will really enjoy it. So Guruji said, "Do your best and leave the rest. This is God's world. The best service you can do for God is to become a good human being yourself and to help others in whatever capacity you can." And so I thought that was very fitting for tonight with the topic of self-effort, because by putting in the self-effort, we are doing our best, and that is all that we can do. Is you put in the best self-effort that you have in whatever capacity, and you leave the rest at the feet of God, and you have faith and you have trust that whatever happens, the outcomes is the divine plan. It is the divine will, and that's not relying on destiny, because you are putting in self-effort. And so this is God's world. And when we put in self-effort with ourselves and becoming a better human and a better person, that benefits other people that we come in contact with, and that helps other people. It helps the community by just working on ourselves. And that is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to the people you love and the people around you, is by working on yourself. So I wanted to share that quote because it was a really nice one that he left with us. So I couldn't see, my phone is not showing me, it wasn't showing anyone on here. I see Sadashivaji, Om Tat Sat. No worries, I know you're busy with work. It's kind of a long Satsanga video, but it's a good one. We covered, I believe I put it up in the description, but we covered section 4 and 5, which was going over the topic of self-effort. So the importance of self-effort. And so that's one of my favorite topics. So yeah, you can go back and watch it. I do want to mention, I did get a Facebook notification that they are now going to be deleting live videos after 30 days. And I always set mine to where they stayed up permanently so people could go back and watch them. So I'm going to try to figure out either Zoom or YouTube and how to connect it with Facebook, so then the videos will be saved somewhere else so they're not getting deleted, so people don't miss out on watching the recordings. So if anyone has any technical advice regarding that, or if they know how to do that, feel free to let me know, because I have no clue how to do it, and I would love to get that set up for everyone so y'all can go back through the videos in order at your own leisure. So yeah, that is it. Sorry if I seem a bit tired. I am kind of tired right now, but that is okay. So divine blessings to Sadashivaji and anyone who is going to be watching the recordings. Just remember, the recordings are now only staying up for 30 days because of a new Facebook policy. So I'll be trying to figure out how to work around that, so the videos will be stored somewhere else to where you can always go and watch them. And divine blessings. May everyone heal. May everyone have peace in their hearts, peace in their minds, and find comfort at the lotus feet of Guru Dev. And I pray for everyone who's struggling right now, because there are so many that are struggling for so many reasons. And I pray that we all just continue with determination and we develop perseverance and grit through these obstacles, and understand that this too shall pass, and it is all temporary, and it's all divine will. It is God's will. It is God's world. And so may all be blessed. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.